I've got lawyers and a former police chief standing by to help us understand what's going on. I've got Charles Ramsey, the former Washington, D.C. police chief, also with Philadelphia, attorney Sarah Azari and Ariva Martin. Good to have all of you all on. I got questions, too. Ariva, let me just underscore some of Ryan's points. So Smollet, when we saw him today there in the courthouse, he says he has been telling the truth the whole time. Then you have the Chicago mayor and the Chicago police superintendent pointing to that evidence, right? They reminded everyone that a grand jury indicted Smollet on 16 felony counts. So how did the state then get to this?
We don't know the answer to that, Brooke, but I can tell you it's been a bad week for lawyers. I am just appalled that the state's attorney would dismiss these charges and still seal the record and not come forward and give the American people more information. Nothing in the statement issued by the district attorney's office says that Jussie Smollet did not stage this entire hoax. They never made that statement. What they said was that they evaluated his history and his commitment to doing community service, and that somehow exonerated him or made him less accountable for these very serious charges. I'm concerned about the status of hate crimes in this country. Hate crimes are real. We know they're on the increase. And to have a alleged hate crime treated in this way by the police department and the state's attorney, and now to see the police department and the state's attorney going after each other, and us, the American people, left with so many questions about what happened in such a serious case. I just can't imagine what the lawyers in that state's attorney's office what are they thinking, and why are they handling this case in what appears to be the most incompetent way possible.
But this evidence, right, that's the key. You want to unlock this evidence. But Sarah, apparently the evidence is sealed shut. So will anyone ever understand what it was the grand jury saw, that it provided those 16 felony counts? Like, where's the transparency?
Brooke, listen, I think that part of the problem is with the Chicago's police department and also the state attorney's office. They really jumped the gun. They tried their case in the court of public opinion very quickly. They presented a lot of leaks as to what they had. And then when they sat down with the defense lawyers and saw that there are holes in their case and potentially there's insufficient evidence to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, then they may have done the right thing. I don't think this is celebrity justice. This case is way too high profile for a DA's office to just hand over a gift of exoneration to Jussie Smollet. And let's remember that his bail is forfeited. It is not exonerated. Usually when an individual is exonerated, so is their bail. So the fact that the bail's forfeited, the money's going back to the city to cover some fraction of the investigation costs, and the fact that he has to do community service tells me that this is some kind of a deal, even though it's not deferred prosecution. I just think while we may not ever know all the details and the answers, like Ariva said, and I think the nation's owed those details and answers, but at the end of the day, the prosecutors have to do the right thing. I'd like to give them, I'm a defense attorney, but I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt and believe that they looked at the evidence, they didn't feel they could prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and they thought that this is the best they could do in the interest of justice.
Chief, try as best as you can to put yourselves in the shoes of Superintendent Eddie Johnson there, who is, first of all, that news conference some weeks ago was stunning. He's angry. He's angry because of the dark mark this has put on his beloved city of Chicago. He's angry because he knows the evidence. I would argue that he would think he did not jump the gun. And he says he found out about all of this when the rest of us did.
Yeah, well, listen, first of all, my hat's off to Eddie Johnson, because he handled himself a lot better than I would have handled myself under the same set of circumstances. This is ridiculous. It stinks. I could not disagree more with your previous guest than I do. This isn't on the police department. They did an investigation. They presented it to the state's attorney, which, by the way, any charge has to be approved by the state's attorney before it could even move forward if it's a felony. Then they take it to a grand jury who agrees and actually adds additional charges. And if it was a case, as far as this public opinion being tried in a court of public opinion, this is a high-profile guy. The media is going to grab onto this. He's an alleged victim of a hate crime. There's a noose. There's Made in America hats that these guys were wearing. Why wouldn't the media cover it? That's just the world that we live in now. That has nothing to do with the police department. This case stinks, and somebody needs to take a look at it. You know, everybody wants to talk about police reform, accountability, transparency. You need to look at some of these prosecutors' offices as well. I mean, something is not right with this. And if there was new evidence that came forward, I guarantee you, Eddie and the mayor would not have been as forceful as they were in their press conference. And not only that, why would you seal it? Let it out there. Let us know what it is that's changed. Nothing has changed other than the fact that this guy got to a judge, got to the state's attorney's office somehow, and they worked out some kind of backdoor deal that threw the mayor and the police department under the bus, period.
And the $10,000 is bond that was forfeited. Does that cover the cost of a police investigation?
That's a joke. That doesn't even come close to covering the cost. That's not one day. You know, I mean, come on. I mean, everybody can see through this. At least you should be able to see through it. You just can't justify. Why would you not at least give the superintendent a heads up? Why would you have the court records sealed? I mean, this stinks. I'm telling you, it stinks. I've seen a lot of bad decisions, or what I believe to be bad decisions before. This one rates right at the top. Something is not right, and people need not let this rest because it's screwed up. I'm telling you.
Ariva, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just want to add, you know, I'm typically not on TV supporting the police, particularly when they engage in bad conduct. But I have to agree with Charles that if we're trying to get to transparency here, the last thing you want to do is seal the records. There'd be no reason to do that. And if what Sarah said is true, if the defense team presented evidence that made the prosecution's case weak, then come forward and tell us what that evidence is. If there is now insufficient evidence to move forward with that 16-count indictment, then tell that to the American people. And we can't forget this case, an element of this case was a phone call made to a high-profile, a former aide to Michelle Obama, made a call to the state's attorney, Kim Foxx, putting her in contact with a family member from Jussie Smollet. There are text messages between Kim Foxx and that attorney or that aide to Michelle Obama and with Jussie Smollet's relative.
Oh, President? Oh, okay. Okay. Thought we had more. That was just the president say goodbye. Sorry, Reba, to slow your roll.
Kim Foxx did recuse herself, but someone from her office took over the, the prosecution of this case. But again, that's an element that I think has to be looked at, and we know police officers in the police department have called on for a federal investigation of Kim Foxx and her communication. So all of these things, again, just make it more difficult, I think, for us, the American people, to accept that overnight there would be a decision made to drop all the charges and to seal the record. We have a right, I think, again, as the American people, to know why these charges were dropped. If Jussie is telling the truth, we should know that.
To that point, Sarah, I mean, do they not, I mean, it's Superintendent Johnson and listening to Ariva and listening to Chief Ramsey, I mean, did they not make good point? Well, why wouldn't you want evidence out there if you are innocent?
Absolutely. And you know what? There's outrage over this. There was outrage when Smollett went from victim to suspect. There's outrage over this sudden decision with no transparency. But I think, you know, that's what we have the Department of Justice for, which does investigations on corruption of DA's offices, of police departments. And the Justice Department can look into this file and what led the DA to first indict on 16 counts, totally overcharged, and then suddenly dismiss every single count. There is going to be some accountability because everybody's outraged over this result without any answers.
Chief Ramsey, I see you shaking your head over there, sir.
Because listen, this whole thing, it just stinks. I mean, and the Justice Department isn't going to do anything with this. I mean, let's be for real. And what will happen in the news cycle is a day or two from now, nobody's going to think any more about this, and everybody's life moves on. If Jussie Smollett were Joe Schmo, just a guy living in Inglewood in Chicago, guess what? His butt would probably be in jail right now. That's just a fact. And now all of a sudden, this guy is going to not only get out free, my understanding is his record could be expunged. The records are sealed. I mean, this is just not right, and everybody wants to talk about police departments, and granted, there needs to be police reform, they need to be held accountable, there needs to be transparency. That goes for the rest of the criminal justice system as well. People need to come out from the shadows and stand up. If they did it, then stand it up.
Chief Ramsey, well, here's my last question. Just because it's not Joe Schmo, it is Jussie Smollett, and everyone's talking about this today and have been talking about this for a while. What impact will this have on the city and its citizens, just in terms of trust?
Well, listen, I would hope that it doesn't. I would hope that people still come forward if they are, in fact, victims of hate crime, and that the police department thoroughly investigates and always makes the assumption that the person is telling the truth, because in most cases they are telling the truth. But if you've got a person who files a false report, and whether they're Joe Schmo or some high-profile actor, it doesn't matter. There should be one standard and one standard only. And if a prosecutor is going to make a decision, then they need to stand behind that decision and let everybody understand why they made it. Don't hide it. Don't seal it where you find out about it 100 years from now. If the evidence changed, fine. What was the new evidence? Let's bring it on, and let's talk about this openly, and then let's move on from it.
Chief Charles Ramsey, Sarah Azari, Areva Martin, excellent conversation, I think, every single one of you. Appreciate it.